Frank Sinatra, smooth voice, sharp style, and a name that practically is the 20th century. Known as the chairman of the board and Old Blue Eyes, he wasn't just another singer, he was the entertainer everyone wanted to be or be with. With over 150 million records sold, Sinatra's music didn't just play in the background, it set the stage for an entire era. But beyond the hits and the Hollywood glitz lies a shadowy side not everyone knows about. Why did almost every celebrity of his time seem to worship him? What was it about Sinatra that made him both feared and adored? Step behind the scenes with us as we uncover the darker side of Frank Sinatra, the man, the myth, and the mystery. Early days, from Hoboken to Hollywood. Sinatra was born in 1915 to a working-class Italian-American family in Hoboken, New Jersey. He wasn't born into wealth, but he was born with a gift, an expressive voice that would become his ticket out of Hoboken. Sinatra's interest in music started young, inspired by the big band sounds that were all the rage in the 1930s. But his big break didn't come overnight. He worked as a singing waiter, crooning to patrons in hopes of catching someone's ear, until he finally caught his first major opportunity, joining a group called the Hoboken Four in 1935. This led to winning an amateur talent show, which marked the first step in a journey that would change American music forever. The big band years, with Harry James and Tommy Dorsey. In 1939, Sinatra got his first big break when bandleader Harry James hired him as the lead singer for his orchestra. Together, they recorded All or Nothing at All, which became an early hit. Sinatra's smooth baritone voice, remarkable breath control, and emotive style began to attract attention. Soon, he was recruited by another big band legend, Tommy Dorsey. Dorsey taught Sinatra his famous breath control technique, which would become a Sinatra trademark. During his time with Dorsey's band, he recorded hits like I'll Never Smile Again and Without a Song. Sinatra's popularity soared, and by 1942, he was ready to strike out on his own as a solo act. The birth of Sinatra mania and Hollywood stardom. As a solo artist, Sinatra became a sensation. His magnetic presence, piercing blue eyes, and heartfelt performances won him legions of fans, particularly teenage girls who swooned at his concerts. This frenzy over Sinatra was nicknamed Sinatra Mania, a phenomenon well before the age of social media hype. In the 1940s, he signed with Columbia Records and recorded timeless hits like The Night and Day, All or Nothing at All, this time a major success, You'll Never Walk Alone, and Someone to Watch Over Me. His voice had a way of making every listener feel he was singing just to them. He was even nicknamed The Voice, and it was clear he wasn't just a pop star, he was the voice of his generation. Hollywood came calling, and Sinatra soon became a film star, often playing musical or romantic roles that showcased his voice. His film career flourished with musicals like Anchors Aweigh, 1945, and On the Town, 1949, where he starred alongside Gene Kelly. By the end of the decade, Sinatra was a multi-talented icon, a singer and an actor, beloved across America. The fall from grace, 1950s downturn. However, fame has a way of shifting, and Sinatra faced a brutal career setback in the early 1950s. His popularity waned as new artists emerged, his record sales dropped, and Columbia Records dropped him from their roster. His personal life was also tumultuous. He divorced his first wife, Nancy, and his romance with actress Ava Gardner became a tabloid fodder. Sinatra's public image had taken a serious hit, and it seemed like he was fading out of the spotlight. By 1952, his acting career was also floundering, and most of Hollywood had written him off. The comeback, From Here to Eternity, and an Oscar win. But if there's one thing Sinatra knew, it was how to make a comeback. Desperate to revive his career, he took a role in the 1953 film From Here to Eternity, accepting a much lower paycheck just to prove himself. He portrayed Angelo Maggio, a scrappy soldier, in a gritty performance that stunned critics. Sinatra's dedication paid off. He won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, sparking one of the greatest career revivals in entertainment history. This Oscar win reignited his career, and he was soon back on top, both as a singer and as an actor. The Capitol Records era, defining the concept album. With his career back on track, Sinatra signed with Capitol Records and began a period of incredible creative output. This era produced some of his most acclaimed albums, as he pioneered the concept album, a cohesive collection of songs that told a story or evoked a mood. Albums like In the Wee Small Hours, 1955, Songs for Swingin' Lovers, 1956, Only the Lonely, 1958, and Come Fly With Me, 1958, showcase Sinatra's versatility, taking listeners on journeys through heartache, joy, and adventure. His voice grew richer, deeper, and more nuanced, with each track showing his mastery over phrasing, emotion, and timing. During this period, he recorded classic songs like I've Got You Under My Skin, The Lady Is a Tramp, Come Fly With Me, and At Witchcraft. These songs weren't just popular, they became standards, defining American music. The Rat Pack and Las Vegas era, Sinatra as a cultural icon. In the late 1950s, Sinatra formed the Rat Pack with friends Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Joey Bishop, and Peter Lawford. They took Las Vegas by storm, performing at clubs and casinos with a blend of music, humor, and a devil-may-care attitude. Their camaraderie and onstage banter embodied cool and made the Rat Pack an enduring part of pop culture. Sinatra became synonymous with the glamour of Vegas, and his Rat Pack shows were must-see events that attracted celebrities, politicians, and fans from around the world. Reprise Records and the mature Sinatra. In 1960, Sinatra took control of his career by founding Reprise Records, giving him unprecedented artistic freedom. His Reprise years produced some of his most iconic songs, including Strangers in the Night, That's Life, Summer Wind, and, of course, My Way. Sinatra's music from this era spoke to the complexities of life and love with a sense of mature sophistication. He was no longer the voice of teenage romance, but the voice of lived experience, offering comfort and understanding for every listener who had faced life's ups and downs. Later years and lasting legacy. Sinatra continued performing and recording well into his later years, releasing hits like New York, New York in 1980, a song that would become an anthem for the city and a staple in his repertoire. He received countless awards, including the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and a Kennedy Center honor. His final concerts in the 1990s marked the end of an era, but Sinatra's influence didn't fade. Frank Sinatra was more than a singer, he was a force of nature, embodying charisma, resilience, and unmatched artistry. His voice could express longing, joy, sorrow, and defiance, all in a single phrase. He set the standard for what it meant to be a star, and his legacy lives on in countless musicians who still look up to him as an icon. In the end, Sinatra's career was a testament to his talent, tenacity, and the sheer force of his personality. No matter how many times the world counted him out, he always came back, stronger and more compelling. He didn't just live a life, he lived the life, and in his own words, he did it my way. Frank Sinatra's life was a blend of passion, drama, and friendships as unforgettable as his voice. Let's dive into some of the most intriguing chapters. First love, first family. Sinatra's first marriage to Nancy Barbotto was a classic love story with a twist or two. They met in 1934 while he was a lifeguard in Long Branch, New Jersey. Picture young Frank on the beach, catching waves and hearts. After a scandalous incident at the rustic cabin that somehow led to his arrest, he promised Nancy he'd settle down, and they married in 1939. Together, they had 3 children, Nancy, Frank Jr., and Tina. But settling down wasn't exactly in the cards for Frank. Despite the family life, he found himself drawn to the allure of Hollywood's most dazzling women. Gossip columns had a field day tracking his many reported dalliances, from Marilyn Monroe to Lana Turner. Imagine being a magazine reader back then. Every week was a new Sinatra affair to swoon or scoff over. Ava Gardner, Fire and Fire. In 1951, Frank left his first family to marry the captivating Ava Gardner. Their marriage? Explosive. Fights and make-ups, public feuds and late-night phone calls, their relationship had it all. By 1953, they publicly separated, but even as they divorced in 1957, Frank was never quite over her. Ava might have moved on, even dating a matador, because, of course, she did, but Frank's feelings lingered. They stayed lifelong friends, with Ava's name forever etched into his heart. Close calls, Lauren Bacall and Juliet Prowse. Frank Sinatra wasn't one to stay single for long. After Ava, he nearly married two other Hollywood stars, Lauren Bacall in 1958 and Juliet Prowse in 1962, but both engagements were eventually called off. Even then, the Sinatra legend kept growing, with rumored romances with other glamorous women, from Pat Sheehan to Kip Hamilton. Frank had a magnetic pull, and Hollywood was just full of people ready to fall for him. In 1966, Sinatra married actress Mia Farrow, who was nearly 30 years his junior. It was short, just 2 years, but they stayed close for life. Decades later, Mia sparked a rumor that Sinatra might be the father of her son, Ronan Farrow. Frank's daughter Nancy squashed that theory, pointing out that Frank had a vasectomy long before Ronan's birth. Still, the rumor only added to the mystique that surrounded Sinatra's love life. Barbara Marx, the final love. In 1976, Sinatra married his last wife, Barbara Marx, tying the knot at Sunnylands, a lush Californian estate owned by media mogul Walter Annenberg. This marriage, unlike the others, lasted until Frank's death in 1998. By all accounts, Barbara was his anchor, grounding his later years with love and stability, a fitting final act for a man whose life had so many plot twists. Sinatra's relationships and his sometimes abrasive, even violent, behavior toward women did not sit well in an era increasingly focused on gender equality and respect. Stories of his womanizing and quick temper seemed at odds with the more progressive values that were gaining traction. He began to represent toxic masculinity rather than the classic cool guy of earlier decades, and his lifestyle was increasingly criticized as outdated and problematic. The accusations cast a shadow over his reputation, making it harder for people to separate the artist from the controversies. Younger fans, in particular, viewed the mob association as morally troubling rather than edgy or glamorous. By the 1990s, newer musical legends had emerged, and the 50s and 60s music scene Sinatra defined seemed distant. Icons like Elvis, the Beatles, and later, rock legends like Jimi Hendrix and Bob Marley took precedence over Sinatra in the nostalgia hierarchy of young fans. Faith and final chapter. Despite his colorful life and a sometimes complex relationship with religion, Sinatra's faith grew later in life. He was inducted into the Catholic Sovereign Military Order of Malta in 1976, and after his mother's tragic death in a plane crash in 1977, he turned to Catholicism more deeply. He passed away a practicing Catholic and received a Catholic burial, adding a quiet, reverent note to his extraordinary life. Lady Macbeth and Wol Blue Eyes. Sinatra's obsession with cleanliness was almost legendary. Back in the days with the Tommy Dorsey Band, he earned the nickname Lady Macbeth due to his habit of showering frequently and changing outfits often. It's almost as if Frank didn't want to leave a single imperfection on stage or in life. His piercing blue eyes became his signature, earning him the beloved moniker Wol Blue Eyes, a nickname that stuck throughout his career. Every detail of his appearance was meticulously curated, from his tux to his perfect smile. A portrait of 1950s America. To many, Sinatra embodied the spirit of 1950s America, cocky, optimistic, and brimming with possibilities. As music critic Santo Pietro noted, he was nigh on the main chance with a sense of relentless ambition. Yet, for all his confidence, Sinatra was far more than just a public persona. His wife, Barbara, reflected on how Frank exuded an air of danger, a tension that only those close to him understood could be diffused with humor and charm. There was a thrill to being around Sinatra. He was unpredictable, a force of nature with a constant sense of urgency. Honesty and hard-driving ambition. Cary Grant, one of Sinatra's close friends, once described him as the most honest person I ever met. Frank was a man of directness, sometimes to a fault. He spoke his mind with no artifice, which often intimidated people. But those who were closest to him understood that beneath the cocky exterior, there was a depth of emotion that few could tap into. His energy and drive were legendary, but it came at a cost. Frank was known to only sleep about 4 hours a night, working tirelessly even when his body craved rest. The inner turmoil. Despite his outward success, Sinatra was often battling demons inside. He had frequent mood swings and dealt with depression for much of his life. In a 1950s interview, Sinatra admitted to an overacute capacity for sadness as well as elation, which paints a picture of the emotional extremes he often swung between. Those who worked with him noticed his quick temper, which would often flare up at the slightest provocation. Barbara Sinatra recounted how Frank could snap at anyone for the smallest infraction, while friends like songwriter Jimmy Van Heusen knew that when Sinatra was drunk, it was best to just disappear until he'd cooled off. Famous feuds. Sinatra's temper was infamous, and if you crossed him in any way, whether it was a journalist writing a bad review, a publicist making a mistake, or a photographer snapping an unwanted photo, you could expect a fiery response. His altercations became part of his larger-than-life persona. There were public feuds, including one with columnist Mike Royko, who questioned why Sinatra received free police protection when he had his own security. Frank's angry letter to Royko threatened physical violence, even accusing him of wearing a toupee. The press fed on these fiery moments, but Sinatra's darker side only fueled his reputation. The mob and Sinatra's ties. The shadow of organized crime loomed large over Sinatra's life. His godfather, Willie Moretti, was a notorious underboss of the Genovese crime family, and their association wasn't just familial, it was transactional. Sinatra reportedly paid kickbacks to Moretti, who even helped him wrangle his release from a contract with the Tommy Dorsey Band. As Sinatra's fame grew, so did his connections to the underworld, with ties to figures like mobster Sam Giancana. Even more infamous was Sinatra's friendship with Bugsy Siegel, a relationship he boasted about to friends, recounting Siegel's violent legacy as though it were just another part of Hollywood lore. In 1946, Sinatra's name became infamous when it was reported that he had attended the mafia-run Havana conference with legendary gangster Charles "Lucky" Luciano. The press wasted no time, with one headline reading "Shame, Sinatra," casting a long shadow over his public image. Sinatra's mafia ties didn't stop there. He reportedly shared a deep bond with mobster Joseph Fischetti, and with Hank Sonicola. The two were financial partners in the gossip magazine Hollywood Nightlife alongside another notorious figure, Mickey Cohen. FBI surveillance. With his ties to the mafia, his outspoken political views, and his close friendship with President John F. Kennedy, Sinatra quickly became a target for the FBI. They kept a staggering 2,403 pages of records on him, documenting everything from alleged death threats to extortion schemes, with Sinatra under surveillance for almost 5 decades. His connections with the mafia became a problem for him, especially as he grew closer to the Kennedys, who were leading a crusade against organized crime. The FBI believed Sinatra was losing favor with the mob as he aligned himself more with the Kennedys, something Sinatra repeatedly denied, calling any report of his association with goons or racketeers a vicious lie. Cal Neva and the gambling world. In 1960, Sinatra bought a stake in the Cal Neva Lodge and Casino, a glamorous hotel and casino located on the north shore of Lake Tahoe. The venue quickly became a hotspot for Sinatra's showbiz friends, including Red Skelton, Marilyn Monroe, and Lucille Ball, who performed in the Celebrity Room theater he had built. By 1962, Sinatra owned a significant portion of the hotel, reportedly holding a 50% share. But as with many of Sinatra's ventures, his ties to the mafia resurfaced. In 1963, the Nevada Gaming Control Board suspended Sinatra's gambling license when Giancana was spotted at Cal Neva. The incident was just one in a long series of pressures from the FBI and Nevada officials against mob-controlled casinos. Sinatra eventually relented, giving up his stake in Cal Neva and the Sands, marking a quiet retreat from the very world that had helped build his fortune. However, the drama didn't end there. In a bizarre twist, Sinatra's personal life took a darker turn that year when his son, Frank Jr., was kidnapped. Thankfully, the ordeal ended without harm, but it only added more turmoil to an already chaotic life. A comeback of sorts. Sinatra's gambling career wasn't finished, though. In 1981, his gambling license was reinstated after strong backing from none other than President Ronald Reagan. It was a sign that, despite his controversial connections, Sinatra remained a formidable figure in both the entertainment and business worlds. Through it all, Sinatra's legacy is a complicated one, simultaneously tied to both the glitz and glamour of Hollywood and the gritty underworld of organized crime. His association with the mafia was never fully severed, and his ties to the world of gambling and mobsters only added to his mystique. But Sinatra never shied away from the rumors or accusations. He lived a life that, like his music, was defined by its highs and lows, full of complexity and contradictions. In his final years, Frank Sinatra's health began to fail him. He spent more and more time in hospitals, fighting off heart and breathing issues, high blood pressure, pneumonia, and even a battle with bladder cancer. After a heart attack in February 1997, he stepped back from public appearances, fading from the spotlight he had once dominated. Then, on the evening of May 14, 1998, Sinatra faced his last fight at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. His wife, Barbara, was by his side, urging him to fight, as doctors did all they could to stabilize him. But Sinatra, always known for his directness, left the world with haunting last words, "I'm losing." He passed away at 82. The aftermath was nothing short of legendary. The Empire State Building glowed blue in his honor, the Las Vegas Strip dimmed its lights, and casinos paused their operations for a full minute, a tribute reserved for only the most iconic figures. That month, Sinatra's albums flew off the shelves, with Billboard reporting a spike in sales as fans around the world remembered him through his music. On May 20, 1998, a crowd of 400 mourners gathered at the Church of the Good Shepherd in Beverly Hills to say a final farewell. Outside, thousands of fans filled the streets, paying their respects to Old Blue Eyes one last time. It was a send-off fitting for a man who had spent a lifetime at center stage, leaving the world with a bittersweet goodbye that would echo in their hearts forever.